Alright, I hope you guys are doing well. It is 8/8/2022, and this is a little bit update what's happening in our world. This is probably my 15th take, so we're just going to jump right in. There's a lot going on, both foreign and abroad. We're going to go into those a little bit. I'm going to give you some commentary. If you Google China War, you just get all this stuff that comes up, and rather than explaining it to you in my mediocre voice, I'm going to let her do it because she does such a great job
military
of it,
has
especially with
encircled
pictures.
Taiwan. Rockets are now flying in every direction. Now look at this map. This is Taiwan, and these are 6 danger zones around the islands. We've been showing you this map all week. This is where the PLA is conducting drills. Missiles are flying from the mainland, and they are landing in every corner. A few missiles went over Taiwan. They landed in Japan's exclusive economic zone, or what they call the EEZ. This area falls in Japan's jurisdiction. Think of it as Japan's sovereign territory. Chinese missiles are landing there. Tokyo has released an assessment. It says at least 5 missiles have landed in Japan's EEZ.
So that is huge. For one, that's a lot of saber rattling, just throwing a bunch of missiles all around the island, right? But then they're hitting the technical portion of Japan's economic zone, and not just with one. Oops, we messed up, but with 5, right? So I'm not sure what they're trying to do, if they're trying to saber rattle Japan or not, but that is very important to at least us as Americans. I would say the world in general, because Taiwan, our president said, hey, if you attack Taiwan, you attack us type thing. We don't have as much of a relationship with Taiwan as we do Japan. Japan is a huge partner with us, much more, just like Germany is. Even though relationships with Germany have been strained in the last few administrations, but in Japan, that is ever since the Second World War. They have been pretty much they've been a close ally to us. So if China really pisses off Japan, excuse my French, if China really bruises up Japan, or Japan starts to get tied into it somehow, then the U.S. will probably be pushing. I mean, and China may be pushing Japan in to push the U.S. in. Who knows? Type thing. But it is getting scary. So just want to keep you guys abreast on that. And oh man, scary stuff. We could see World War III, our generation. But why Taiwan? So let's look at this. Yeah, there's the island Taiwan, China. You got South Korea, Japan, Philippines, Vietnam. It's important that most of these countries right here, not all of them, but I have very good relationships and are allies with the U.S. So it's kind of China, especially Japan. If China attacks Japan, we'll be pulled into it, and so will South Korea. And I'm pretty sure I don't think Vietnam will, but the Philippines possibly. But I know South Korea and Japan will definitely. And these are first world countries.
Them a stone's throw away from Taiwan. So why is it only China that is obsessed with this little island? Taiwan first appeared in Chinese records during the Zhou dynasty. The emperor had sent an expedition, and the explorer spotted Taiwan. This is China's side of the story. In the 1600s, Taiwan became a Dutch colony. Portuguese sailors called Taiwan Ilha Formosa, meaning beautiful island. The Dutch rule lasted from 1624 to 1661. In 1683, Taiwan came under China. This was during the Qing dynasty. In the years that followed, a lot of Chinese migrated to Taiwan. They were mostly Hakka Chinese. This Chinese rule lasted till 1895 because in 1895, China lost the first Sino-Japanese war. Taiwan had to be given away to Japan. Decades later, when Japan lost the Second World War, Taiwan was up for grabs again and China was on the winning side. Then it was called the Republic of China, or ROC. So the ROC jumped at the idea of controlling Taiwan. It had the blessings of the US and Britain. But the Republic of China, or ROC, was a mess. It was a military dictatorship. Chiang Kai-shek was its leader. He led a nationalist party called the Kuomintang. He ruled China with an iron fist. Under him, there was unrest, unhappiness, and a civil war. It was at this time that communist leader Mao Zedong became increasingly popular. His Red Army fought Chiang's party. Mao won. In 1949, he established the People's Republic of China, or the PRC. Chiang fled to Taiwan. The island had a
Okay, so dang commercials. Anyway, so basically that is the history between China and Taiwan, right? So basically China got it back. They owned Taiwan from the Japanese after World War II, and then there was basically a civil war that happened, right? And so the current military, there was a coup, and the current military fled to Taiwan because they kind of lost in a sense, right? And instead of technically losing, they just fled to this island and fortified themselves. And China said, okay, we're not going to chase them or anything like that. But ever since you talk to any Chinese person, ever since that happened, China has always wanted Taiwan back under its wing. They've always wanted control, even though it's been like 70 years since this thing has happened. It's been generations, since this thing has happened. So this is a very deep tie into Chinese culture, their history, and all their people know it. All there's like this murmur of desire for all of that every Chinese person has to have Taiwan. Typically, they're pretty chill about it type thing, but they all know it. I'm trying to think of a good example in the U.S. that we have, but nothing really comes to my mind. It's very different from our Civil War, which one a side lost and the other won the war. This is more of one side seemed to lose that they were not necessarily exiled, but they retreated to an island, and it's just been at a standstill ever since. And this is why you see on some maps, Taiwan, they'll mention Taiwan, some will not, right? It just depends if they are taking the Chinese side or taking the Taiwanese side. Even in the Olympics, I forget if they said that they were Taiwan or if they recognize Taiwan as a country. So you can kind of tell who's playing, who's rooting for China or uh, who is scared of Chinese censorship by if they acknowledge Taiwan as its own country or not. All right, but that is the foreign stuff. Let's go to domestic. We have a new stimulus bill that has passed the House and is going to be voted on the Congress. This is really important because it only had to pass by 50 votes, and Joe Manchin and there's another female, I forget her name, but Manchin's the kind of limelight. They had stopped the big economic stimulus deal that they tried to pass a few months ago, but now they got Joe Manchin on and the other one on board, and they have already passed it in the House, and then it goes to Congress to pass, and if it's expected to pass there, and then we'll have another stimulus bill. But this one's very different. Like there's no checks, no anything. In fact, it is called the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. And if you know anything about, just a spoiler, if you know anything about um, government names of bills, um, they do the opposite. Okay, so this is going to hope to reduce inflation, right? We're going to hope that's what happens, and we're going to see what's in this bill.
Explain that in a minute. There's going to be 4 main categories of this bill. Now here's the first one. So this is number 1 of 4. The IRS would receive $80 billion. The annual budget of the IRS is $13 billion. So $80 billion, even though it's going to be spread out over multiple years, I mean, we're still talking about a significant amount of money. $45 billion of that would be utilized for IRS tax enforcement to audit more Americans. The IRS is saying, with this additional $80 billion of funding, they're going to be able to collect an extra $204 billion by auditing more Americans, resulting in a net profit of $124 billion. Basically, the IRS is saying that you have to spend money to make money. Give them $80 billion, they'll turn it into $204 billion.
All right, let's go over that real quick. So if you look at that statement from a business, you're like, yeah, that's great. It takes money to make money. Yeah, cool. And what that is basically you take your money and you invest in something to buy inventory, get office space, hire people to do the work. The services depends what you're making a product or serving people, stuff like that. And how you make your money is consumers buy your product or your service. Well, let me ask you this: what is the IRS? What is their product or service? Well, it is you and me. It is our tax dollars. That is what they're trying to get. That is what they make. That is what what they're doing. So basically, what they're saying is the U.S. government saying, "Hey, we're going to make more money by taking it from our citizens via taxation." Right? And there's a lot of assumptions that come through this thing that a lot of people aren't paying their taxes uh, purposely, not just the fact that you need a 4-year degree and like 2 years of tutelage in order to do a complex tax return yourself. They are saying that, hey, people are purposely, evading taxes or skirting them, not paying them, all this other good stuff, and we're gonna come after them. So it's like, oh, none of that. But he said 13 million is a normal IRS yearly budget. They give them 80 million, uh, or excuse me, 85 over the course of I don't know how many years type thing. So all this bill is saying is like, hey, we're gonna come after Americans and make sure that I would say even overtax them in a sense, not technically because they'll never say that, but they're gonna put you to the meat grinder and say, oh, that's not a write off, oh, that's not a write off, oh, this is that. So I would definitely keep your receipts, make logs, do everything you have to just to say, hey, I will probably get audited in the next 2 to 4 years.
Tex-Mex and margaritas. Oh, margaritas and Tex-Mex.
See y'all at Chewy's.
4 seconds left. Ugh.
Steady's owner benefit package, where rent protection, industry insights, and
So,
liquidity.
talk about taxing time and such like that.
Number 2, $385 billion will be spent on climate and green energy initiatives. $20 billion would be spent on promoting electric vehicles. People buying an electric vehicle, they will receive a $7,500 tax credit on the spot. Many manufacturers, such as Tesla, they are no longer eligible for the existing tax credit. So in other words, you buy a Tesla right now, you're ineligible for the current tax credit. This bill, it would requalify Tesla and all other manufacturers. So there would also be a new $4,000 tax credit if you purchase a used electric vehicle. $30 billion will be spent on clean agriculture.
All right, real quick. So what are they saying? Basically, they're pushing EVs, so they're giving tax credits, 7,500. Tesla has been. The White House does not like Tesla for some reason. I don't know what Elon did or said, or maybe he. Anyway, but Tesla would be a part of this, and so any brand new vehicle, $7,500 off, right? You get a rebate or something like that. If it's a used vehicle, 4,000. So what is this going to do to the EV market, right? Electric vehicle. Well, it's going to make prices go up. I mean, or just help prices not go down, depending on what the market says. Also, ask yourself, who, if you take $7,000 off, can really afford an EV vehicle? Well, it's middle to upper middle class and higher. It is not people who are going paycheck to paycheck. It's not people who make 40 or 50,000 a year unless they've got a good amount in savings and they've been really, really good stewards of their finances. It's not them. It is basically, I would say, people like you and me that are upper middle class, can have lots of disposable income, and we can afford to buy, and we may take advantage of this to do it. And so, yeah, and here's the other kicker. They're trying to lower the cost of oil and gas, right? I don't know if you've noticed this, I've talked a bit about it, but your electricity, when it renews, if it hasn't yet, it is going to go up. It is flying higher, and this is why. Buying an EV, like my next car is going to be a Tesla, and I will probably be honest, I will probably use the 7,500 credit, and I've kind of been waiting on it. I will use it to buy my Tesla, but here's the big thing. Here's the kicker. We're not really fixing the problem. See, the problem is not oil and gas is higher, let's buy all EVs, because we have to ask the question, hey, where does the energy for EVs come from, right? Where do they get the electricity from? Well, it comes from burning oil and gas and coal, all right? So these aren't very good renewable things for the environment. These are like natural gas is very clean. Coal is dirty energy, right? It is cheap, it's easy, it's dirty. This is why China has so much smog, because they burn coal, so much coal. They're the number one user of coal in the U.S. in the world, excuse me. And so they burn a ton of it. That's why they have so much smog in and around their major cities, right? We typically burn a lot of natural gas, And so, and we actually changed laws to make it consider natural gas green energy, which is ironic that they want to try to put ONG company, oil and gas companies, uh, out of business, but yet they quantify natural gas as green. So this is why when you look at your electricity providers, they'll say, hey, 100% green. They're not getting it all from solar and wind and hydro. They're getting it from, they're just burning 100% natural gas, or like 95% natural gas and 5% solar, wind, and water. But anyway, my point is it's not going to help the problem. It's just going to give us a discount for our EVs.
30 billion on green energy technology, 30 billion for green electricity, 40 billion for green manufacturers, and 235 billion on green energy tax credits. So that's 385 billion in total. To put that into context, $385 billion is how much the $1,400 stimulus checks cost the governments. The Democrats are saying that these...
All right. So real quick, they're going to put 435 billion into building green renewables energy sources, which is great. I think that's great. Then there's only one problem with that. When you do the research, when you get the understanding of it, and I've had other videos of this, you can go back and look at them, but the long short of the story is we don't have enough raw materials in order to build out the infrastructure for a completely renewable and green energy power grid and structure, right? We don't have the raw materials. We don't have the steel. We don't have the copper. We don't have the aluminum. We don't have the silver. We don't have all of those raw materials to do it. Plus, let's say we did. How are we going to build it? How are we going to smelt the iron? How is the guy who's going to put up the windmill, and him and his crew, going to get it out there to put it up? They're going to have to use oil and gas, right? They're going to have to get in their car that they do every day and go. Even if they get into an electric one, that's still going to burn oil and gas, right? Because we talked before, as their power source. Number two, like a lot of our machinery has not been calibrated to using electric yet. It still uses oil and gas or diesel. So in other words, if you're digging a hole to put that windmill up, or having had a crane to move it, right? Those things aren't operating off electricity; they're operating off oil and gas still. So oil and gas is still a huge part of it. I think this is a great part of it. I just think right now is not the best time, right? I think what they should do is they should take off their boot off of the neck of oil and gas companies, drop the price of oil and gas. That'll hit Putin and his war and all this other stuff, and give us a little more leeway with both inflation, the economy, and getting some infrastructure going. So I don't know what's going to happen with this. I can't really tell. My guess is it's because there's going to be a lot of wasted money. The government's going to put it into projects. I'm like, oh, it failed, sorry. And it's like, well, sorry. I mean, I think it's just going to be a lot of waste. But at the same time, it's going to be 435 billion more of U.S. dollars dumped into the economy. This is not going to reduce inflation, right? Inflation Reduction Act is not going to reduce inflation.
These new and extended tax credits, they're going to incentivize solar, wind, hydropower, and other forms of renewable energy. The goal is to make green energy production cheaper than fossil fuels. So Chuck Schumer, he's the leader of the...
Yeah, if you do the research, it's not going to be cheaper. I mean, it's not going to be viable. We're still going to need fossil fuels. We don't have the resources. We don't have the infrastructure, and they're trying to build it, which is great, but it's gonna need a runway of about 15 to 20 or 30 years to really get the infrastructure. We'll make a small dent, but the cost of making that dent, we have to ask ourselves, is this the right time? Is this the right way to go about it? Thinking of what I'm going to say.
Democrats in the Senate. Senator Schumer and Manchin, they are saying that this bill, it will reduce carbon emissions by 40% by 2030.
By 2030, yeah. At first, it's going to raise them up, but it may give some reductions if everything goes according to the plan, which we all know that things rarely go according to plan.
So President Biden's goal, it's to lower U.S. emissions by 50% by 2030. So this bill, it would do most of the heavy lifting to reach that goal. Number 3 of 4, $100 billion would be spent on healthcare. Medicare would be allowed to negotiate drug prices for the first time. So this would be a major win for the Democrats, who have promised to lower the cost of medicine, especially for seniors. Obamacare would be expanded. The premium tax credits, they would be extended for 3 more years through 2025. And the
So that one's kind of a cool one. I don't know how it has directly to tie into inflation, but it really seems like it's going to help people, especially when you said Medicare can actually barter and negotiate their prices. Like that's really interesting. So I'm kind of like, and I'm not old enough to really use any of that, but I think that would be really good for our society. I don't know about the Obamacare pushing that back. That could be useful, could be not. I actually have a lot of experience with Obamacare. I was on it for the first 3 years that it was out, and I'll tell you right now, first year it was actually great. You know, you getting health insurance, the health insurance marketplace, it was actually really, I would say, good coverage. Not even decent. It was above that. It was great coverage. It was a decent price, you know, and that you got it because you had to type thing. And then the second year it went down a notch, and the third year it was complete crap. Like it was all HMOs. All there was no PPOs to be found. I mean, it was just bottom of the barrel. So it started out really good, and then what happened is, and I'm just by year 3. I mean, Obama has been in office for the I forget Obamacare. I forget the technical name of it, but it's been out for almost just shy of a decade now, right? And I haven't gone on it, but man, it's probably gotten really bad because this is why health insurance companies, they're forced to it. They put a policy up there, cool, and then what happens with insurance companies? They make changes to become more profitable, right? Oh, we'll cut this, we'll add this, we'll raise this premium over here, we'll lower this one over here, and they do it to become more profitable, right? Well, Obamacare was trying to say, hey, good health insurance for everyone. Everyone has a right to it equally. And at first it was great, and then when you try to strong arm the free market, things change. And at first they're great, but in this case, they started to go downhill quite quickly. And we're talking about in a period of 3 years, there were no PPOs, just HMOs. Which HMOs, if you don't know, it's kind of the bottom of the barrel of health insurance, right? It is not what you really want to be covered unless you are betting that you're not going to use your health insurance, okay? Um, and it's still here's the kicker: it was a bottom of the barrel policy, and it still cost a lot of money. Like I was paying as much for health insurance as a single guy in my 30s that I was paying. It was in between a car payment and rent, depending on how much your rent was, okay, or a house payment. It was between, just for a single guy, it was between 400. It was about probably $400 to $600 a month. Yeah. Um, Again, no accidents, great, not a smoker, anything like that. There's nothing to really raise it up. But and I was paying a high premium for bottom of the barrel insurance.
last one, number 4. This bill, it would be the largest corporate tax increase in decades. There would also be the closing of many tax loopholes, such as carried interest. There would also be a 15% corporate minimum tax. Now, this corporate tax increase, this is going to be very important to the situation, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. But just keep that in mind. Now, I told you that this bill, the plan is to spend over $500 billion. And I told you that the Democrats are saying that this bill will lower inflation. Let me explain.
Real quick, corporate tax thing. You know what that's going to do? That's going to raise prices and cut workers. Bottom line, you tax corporations. They're going to try and recoup that money somewhere else, especially the ones that are really, really struggling. And if you start to take away, and if it's combined with you taking away certain tax credits, right? And the IRS breathing down your throat, okay? So let's just say you have a small to medium-sized company, or even a large company, and all of a sudden, 15% of your tax credits are gone, and now, okay, so now you have to, instead of having a 15% margin, which is that's typically what a company makes, around 15%. Some are 10, some are 30, but 15 to 20% is um, uh, about a good gauge, a good estimate, right? Once all the bills are paid and everything like that. So now you've just eaten up about 50 to 75% of the corporation's of their earnings, right? Of what they take home, right? Or what they show their what am I thinking? Gross, their net profits. Okay, taking away 50 to 75% of that, and now you are putting them under the gun of a lot of IRS agents, right? Which means they're probably going to need to do more accounting, maybe hire another person, or outsource it to a specialty person or entity, and that's going to cost them more money. So what's going to happen? Well, they're going to lay somebody off because the highest thing uh, in business, the most costly item is people. Okay, and let's say you're producing at this location, this location, and you're making money. You're not going to shut down the location because they're making money in it, right? What you're going to do is you're going to maybe let go of 2 or 3 people in those and put the burden of work on the others, right? And you're like, hey, we've got to do this, or we sink as a corporate, and everybody gets fired, so or laid off because we have to shut our doors. That's the choices that will most likely come from this.
Explain that. Here's the plan. This is how things are supposed to work out. The government is going to spend approximately $500 billion, but the bill, it will bring in approximately $800 billion of additional taxes and savings. So that's
So they're going to pay $500 million, throw $500 million into the economy, right? Into the U.S. Not for you and me, but to certain people, right? I mean, we might get $7,500 or some cheaper health insurance depending on where we're at in life or what we choose to buy. But they're going to get back $800 billion. So they're going to take $800 billion away from the people of the U.S., right? Of people like you and me. If there's, 800 billion. If there's 365 million people in the U.S., right? And you do 800 billion, yeah, and all these zeros that are, I think there's 365 people in the U.S. That's $2 a person extra. I'm pretty sure I did my math wrong somewhere in there, but I forget how many actual taxpayers there are, but we'll see what happens with that.
a net surplus of $300 billion.
300 billion.
Now, let me walk you through the numbers. This is the math, at least according to the bill, according to the Democrats. So the IRS is saying that they're going to collect an additional $204 billion. So we're starting off the math at $204 billion. You add $313 billion from the corporate minimum tax, $288 billion of government savings for negotiating drug prices, add another $14 billion for closing tax loopholes. So that's going to sum up to over $800 billion in additional taxes and savings. So 800, and then the government, they're saying, well, the Democrats are saying that the government will spend about $500 billion of that. So that's going to equal a surplus of $300 billion, and that will lower inflation. So that's their argument. That's the plan.
So I figured out when he was talking what I messed up. So 800, gosh, there's so many zeros in this. 800 billion, that's 800 million, 800 billion. So, all right, divided by 365 million, and that's just going, I forget how many Americans. You know what? Let's just do this. Let's do this. We're just gonna go. All right, 143 million. Okay, so I think total there's. Oh man. Okay. So we're gonna do this math. We're just gonna do some real quick math. 144 million, and they're looking to get 800 billion. And this is just going per person. This is not through companies and stuff like that. I get that, but this is this. If we go through an average person, they're gonna tax the average person $5,500 a year. That is what they're looking. And we're already paying 1.5 trillion, right? So the average person is going to have to pay $5,500. That's what they're doing in this. You can probably see what I think about the bill. I don't think it's going to work. Well, I think it's going to cause a lot of inflation and a lot of heartache. And I think it's going to turn a lot of people Republican really quickly, or at least voting for this one time, right? Because this is going to hit our pocketbooks really hard, and it's not going to be pleasant. So I'm going to leave you with that. We're going to end, and I hope you guys have a great night and a good accountant.